Good morning, everybody. Hi. Sorry, took a few seconds to get us going here, but we're going to talk today about, this is the fourth session number 4 in Realtor Safety Workshop here this September 2017, which is, of course, Realtor Safety Month, as sponsored and put on by the National Association of Realtors. This presentation has nothing to do with what they talk about, nothing to do with their safety program, other than let's take advantage of the same month of September and get to talk about safety. So this session, we're going to talk about overcoming common barriers to safety, because there are a whole bunch of different things that contribute to us not doing things the way that we should when it comes to safety. Most of it revolves around fear, but it's not necessarily the fear of the bad guy that we're talking about, but the overall fear of a series of different things that keep us from doing the things that we should do in order to be safe on the job. So without further ado, let's get us rolling into this. Pardon me. The very first one, like we talked about, is fear. Overcoming the number one barrier is fear. But it's not just fear of the bad guy. It's fear of not doing things correctly. It's fear that you're not going to do something right, that you're not going to use that app right, that you're not going to tell them, your clients, to do the right thing. You're not going to say the right thing. You're not going to do the right thing. You're not going to park like you're supposed to, and all these other types of things that you've been told. Bottom line is the lovely association that we have that supports us nationwide has come out with their list of 56 things that you can do to stay safe. That's 56. 5-6. That's a lot. That's a lot of things to do. And they give you the idea that if you don't do these 56 things, that you're going to die. I mean, it's insane. It's like, that's not how things work. Because most people's brains, when you talk about how you do processes and how you do different things, goes 1, 2, 3, pah. You do one thing, two things, then three things. After that third step, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly when it comes to complicated things and a little bit harder to understand and less tangible things like safety. So you have this idea that if you do these 56 things, you're safe. If you don't do these 56 things, or you do one of them wrong or several of them wrong, then you are not going to survive that particular thing. So we know that's not true. We know that 56 things are just out there as a generic checklist of a couple things that you can consider, but every situation varies. That's the real world way around it. But that's not what most people talk about when they talk about overcoming your fear when it comes to safety. There are also the other things that, like, well, I took this 3-hour self-defense class. If you want to know more about self-defense and why that, the whole self-defense mythology thing, tune into last week's episode. Thank you for the love. And if you want to, they talk about self-defense in terms of just kick them in the crotch or you'll die. And if you don't do that properly, if you don't execute that move that you learned last Saturday afternoon for a couple hours, if you don't execute that move exactly perfectly, then you are thereby unsafe and something's going to go very horribly wrong. And that's not true either. The second piece is once you start talking about things like weapons, you start, well, buy this special pink pepper spray and attach it to your purse and put it in your pocket or you'll die. If you don't buy this pepper spray, you'll die. If you don't execute that crotch kick perfectly, you'll die. If you don't do these 56 things perfectly, you'll die. That puts this state of fear, or builds this state of fear within agents, that we just don't know what to do anymore. We figure that we've got all these different things to do, and if we don't execute on them perfectly, then something horrible is going to happen. Shoot them in the face, or you'll die. Say this, or you'll die. That's the very extreme end of it, but that's the first big bubble, big layer of fear that we have when it comes to agent safety. We fear that we're going to do something wrong. Now, on the backside of that, we fear that we're going to not do what we're supposed to do. So on the one hand, you have something that you're going to try and something that you're going to do. You're going to do this one thing, but then you're worried about whether or not you can execute it perfectly, or whether or not you can do it good enough to get by. Is this going to work when in fact I need it to work? But the second piece of that is, what if I have these 56 things to do? I'm supposed to kick them in the crotch. I'm supposed to shoot them in the face. I'm supposed to buy this pepper spray, and I don't. Now what? That builds in the second layer of fear. What do you do when you don't do the things that you're supposed to do? That becomes a problem instantly and right away, because now you start building anxiety. You start going, well, gosh, I don't know. Did I do that properly? Am I supposed to do that? Is this thing going to work right? What if I try this? What if I try that? And those are the things that lead you to create this entire big state of fear. So on top of what you're supposed to do, and which most of the things that you're supposed to do or you're being taught incorrectly, and then the things that you don't do that you should do, this builds up this idea of uncertainty and anxiety. Uncertainty leads to you not doing what you should do. It leads to lack of confidence. It leads to a lack of control. When in fact, certainty is exactly the thing that you need. Control is exactly the thing that you need. I'm not talking about controlling the interview and controlling the conversation like they do in so many sales videos. I'm talking about controlling your own actions and being able to predict those things that other people might be able to do, or do to you, or do around you or near you, and be able to act in such a way that you constantly maintain control. Think about when you operate your car. I love to use the vehicle analogy and the driving analogy because it works so powerfully to understand what it means to be in control and out of control. Just because your car moves a little bit on the highway, or you go over a bump that doesn't quite, that startles you, it doesn't mean you've lost control of the vehicle. It means for that moment in time, it maybe wakes up your senses and goes, wait a minute, I got to focus this. Maybe you stop at that point and you put your hands at 10 and 2 and you do that whole thing. Maybe you slow down a little bit. Maybe if it's a slippery road, you steer things a little bit differently. You add a little bit more distance braking. This is what you do when you lose that little idea of control. Whether or not you actually lost control, this is how you typically go about it. And that's why we feel very certain in our cars that we can maintain and regain that control if we lose it quickly. So that's how that fear builds into the uncertainty, which eventually can build up into a state of denial. And, as the saying goes, that's not a big river in Africa. That's actually a really horrible state to be in. The state of denial that this won't happen to me. This isn't something that's going to happen to me. It's not going to happen around here. I'm pretty good. I'm in pretty good shape. I just don't think it's going to happen to me. The problem with that, as we'll get into as we move farther down the line a little bit, is that denial can build all the way down into arrogance. All the way down into arrogance of thinking that this cannot happen to me. I'm too smart, I'm too fast, I'm too strong, I'm too tough, I'm too prepared. That also will lead to a problem. But the state of denial that you're sitting in basically keeps you and prevents you from doing those things that you should do, like we talked in the beginning, and it keeps you from doing them correctly, as we talked in the very beginning. So when you have that state of denial, you just don't think, I'm not, even if I try it, I can't do it. I've practiced this kick to the crotch 100 times, and I just don't know if I can do it. And you start to live in this idea that, well, if I can't do it right, then I'm not going to do it at all. And that builds right back into that first part that we talked about. So all of these things start to build one on top of the other. Your fear, your uncertainty, and your denial, all the way down till you get to a point of complacency. Now you've built all these different things in, and you start to do things differently. Once you've gotten into your head, then this state of denial that, this isn't going to work. It's not for me. I don't need to do that thing. That's not really all that important. It can't happen to me. It won't happen to me. I've already done this. I'm prepared. I've got all this stuff going on. So you start developing habits that are of complacency, really. So how that can impact you is fairly obvious. If you don't do what it is that you're supposed to do, that's when trouble starts to come up. Back to the driving in your car. If you just get complacent and you start texting a little bit more than maybe you should, because you probably do text if you're a real estate agent and you're watching to this. I don't know, everybody does that at some point in time. So you start to build in and you start to build in, you're texting, and then you really seriously like, whoa, I almost hit something, or you do hit something. And that's because you built that in that complacency thinking that, well, I can do this. It's not going to be a big deal. I don't need to pull over. I don't need to do that. Now you've built in this complacent attitude that it's not going to happen to me because, well, I can text and drive at the same time. Or you build in that complacency that says, I don't need to check into the background of every person that I meet or every person that I'm about to meet. I can just roll with it because I'm big enough, strong enough, fast enough, tough enough that nothing's ever going to happen to me. So you see how these all build down on top of each other. until they get to the worst of the scenarios, and that's arrogance. Once you get all the way down into the point of arrogance, that you are superior and nothing can ever happen to you, you cannot be defeated, well, that's the beginning signals of the fall. Because this is usually the point in time when somebody gets a really harsh shake of reality. Now, maybe it doesn't happen to you. Maybe you never get that real challenge and you never get that real experience of the idea that, hey, look, I am the biggest Billy badass on the block and nothing can happen to me. And then you get punched in the mouth. As Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So if you build in all the way down to that arrogant state, that's when people really start to get hurt. And because the one thing that you do not want to do when it comes to a violent situation or an unsafe situation is escalate it. And most guys who get into the arrogant state, and I say guys because it's predominantly men who get into that arrogant state, but there are a lot of women who get into that arrogant state too. I find very commonly that the women who feel fit, strong, and maybe they take some level of self-defense course, or maybe they take or are actually very proficient at using a firearm, they tend to be the worst offenders in this realm. They tend to be the worst and the most arrogant of all. They're like, nothing happens to me because I do this, and I can fight and I can shoot. I'm going, well, that's just arrogance. Because always, I don't care who you are, where you are in this world, there's always somebody out there that is bigger, stronger, faster, tougher, meaner, and more focused than you. Always. Always. I don't care who you are. If not now, tomorrow. If not today, maybe 3 days from now. But there's always somebody out there who is tougher, faster, stronger, harder, meaner, tougher, and more focused than you are. And when I say more focused, it's because that bad guy just wants one thing. They want the thing that they came to get. And if violence is the answer, typically your bad guy uses violence in a way that you can't comprehend. Because you were acting from a state of violence to just stop the violent act. That is not the intent of most bad guys. Once the bad guy escalates it to the state of violence, they escalate it to the point of stop this person from preventing me from getting what I need. Stop them. Now, we're going to violence acts a little bit when the as we talked about in a previous session, once you've made the decision to enter into a violent state, once the bad guy makes that decision, typically all thoughts of consequences are out the window. All thoughts of human compassion are out the window, because now they're there to get what they want. And the only way they get what they want is through you. And if going through you means to seriously injure, hurt, maim, kill, well, then that's what they're going to do. And typically, most folks will only do enough just to stop the onslaught of the attack. And that works okay when it comes to just social aggression, the tough guy at the bar. That works okay with them, but it does not work when they're dealing with an actual, real life bad guy. A bad guy who wants nothing more than what you have, and they'll do anything to get it. So when you build in that arrogance, when you say that, I live in such a state of fear that I'm going to do all of these different types of things. I'm going to do 56 different things. I'm going to learn that crotch kick. I'm going to learn to shoot him in the face. I'm going to learn all of these different types of things. I'm going to become Bruce Lee next weekend because I'm taking a 3-hour instant ninja class. You build all the way down to the point where you're arrogant about what can or cannot happen to you. You've ignored all possibility. You become that big, impervious to harm, knight in shining armor that just isn't true. It's not real, and it doesn't really exist. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't shouldn't walk around with a state of kind of control and alpha dominance. You have your chest, your shoulders back, your chest out. Doesn't mean you can't do that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do that, because in fact you should. But you should also treat every situation as if the bad guy or the person in front of you that's putting you in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, or something's not quite going right, or it's in fact a violent situation. The one thing that you don't want to do is escalate that scenario by thinking that you will fight your way out of it. If you think that you're going to fight your way out of it, you've already lost. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. Maybe you physically can. Maybe you can shoot your way out. Maybe you can do that crotch kick and the pepper spray and it all works out great. But what if it doesn't? You want to talk about a broken human being. You want to talk about a broken human being who has gone through all the training and gone through all the stuff and taken so much time and effort, and then they actually get smacked in the mouth. and they end up crumpled in the corner, curled up in the fetal position. That person's life is wrecked from that point forward, because everything that they thought they knew, everything that they thought they believed in and that they were capable of doing is hereby shattered and completely broken. This is one of the ways and one of the things that happens with a whole bunch of people who perform at a very high level and then don't one day. Depression starts to kick in, and really, really, really bad things start to happen from them. So my hope would be that you never face any of these situations, that you never face or hear of any of these things going on that affect you personally. But if you build that fear, uncertainty, complacency, denial, complacency, all the way down to a point of arrogance, someday you're going to lose. And it's not going to be a loss that you're going to enjoy. It's not going to be one of those that, okay, you just got a little bit bloodied up, but the bad guy won, but you walked away with your pride, your dignity, and your life. Because there's a high possibility and even a probability in a lot of cases that you're going to walk away minus at least one of those things. So you have to be very careful how you build in your safety procedures. Again, remember, going back to previous sessions, but safety is not a destination, it's a way of life. It's a way of doing things. And if you approach everyone that you meet as if they're about 6 seconds away from a shooting spree, I think everybody would treat each other a whole lot nicer out there. Not just to show a form of respect, not just to be a quote-unquote nice guy, but to avoid the fight. Anybody out there that is looking for a fight and anticipating something going wrong, hoping that they can do something about it, is a dangerous person. Now, that's my humble opinion, but I've seen those types of things firsthand. Firsthand in theaters of combat, outside on the mean streets of Baghdad. The one who is looking for a fight will often find it. And the one who is trying to avoid it will often live to fight another day. Because when violence is the answer, it's the only answer, and it must be extreme, and it has to be go all out. Once you've gotten past that point of no return, it has to be an unforgivable, unforgiving, unrelenting form of violence that ends that situation immediately. And I mean disabled, kill, maim, disable, whatever you have to do to the bad guy. Because once you've gotten to that point, you have passed a threshold. But everything that you do up to that threshold is what you should focus in on. This is going back to that stuff that we talked about in previous sessions about left of boom. The boom is the bad thing that happens, and you want to focus on everything that is to the left of the boom. Not the stuff that happens after the fact. Not the stuff that happens once the bad guy has grabbed you around the throat. That's not the time to execute your special move that you learned one day. If you learned a special move that in your karate class or your kung fu class someday, and you learned how to do that, you realize that you've already had the bad thing happen. It's already here. It's right here. And what are the chances that you can beat a bad guy in a hand-to-hand combat environment? I don't know about you, but I don't think my odds are very good, because I don't fight for a living. I don't fight to hurt. Meaning that, the guys like we talked about, again, one of the previous sessions about the Mexican mafia having a reading list where they had to study human anatomy in order to figure out how to disable the human body, how to injure the human body irreparably, instantly, as quick as they can. Because the Mexican mafia guy wants to walk up, a guy who, once he has to get to that point where he uses violence, he goes up, bam, one knock, one punch, one stab, and they want to end it right then, right there. Now they're looking at it from one of two things. They're either looking to end your life in that instant, or they're looking to send a message. And they can send a message by sending you to the hospital or the morgue. Oftentimes they don't really care how that works out. I can tell you one thing, they're not walking up to you to intimidate you. There's not going to be one of those little two chickens, two roosters in the barnyard just buffing up their feathers and bumping into each other for about a half an hour like you see in these typical street fights. Real bad guys don't operate that way. So I hope you never have to deal with any of these things. But learning and relying on the fact that you took a karate class once is all right of boom activities. And you want to focus in on the left of boom. You want to focus in on everything that happens prior to. Now I apologize, because this is a reversed image on this particular camera. All of this stuff is going to be backwards. The left is going to be, I think, over there. So once I get this video back, and I'll flip it around and repost it so it'll make a little bit more sense. But I realize that some of that stuff doesn't quite add up. Words are backwards and things like that. But the idea is to really, really focus in on all those things that happened before. I really hone in on that stuff of left of boom. Because the entire safety mentality that happens in the real estate industry today, one of the biggest barriers of all is the idea of focusing on everything that happens after the fact. With your pepper spray, with your tell people where you're going, with your safety apps, with your guns, with all of those different types of things, they're all right-a-boom activities. The only thing, when you go and you tell somebody where you're going, the only thing that does is help police help find your body later on. That's about it. I realize that's the extreme case, but that's exactly what happened to Beverly Carter. She told her husband where to go, so much so that when she didn't show up at the time that he thought she should, he went straight to that house, found her car, never saw her again until, well, funeral, really. So the idea of telling someone is all right of boom stuff. You want to focus in all of your attention, or as much of your attention as you possibly can, on that left of boom stuff. Now, the reason this is important and reason why this translates very well to the real estate industry is because of what I've done throughout my my bad day business career. One of those big things is nuclear weapons. I mean, that's kind of one of my key specialties, is working to avoid and or respond to a nuclear incident. Now, I can tell you, we do spend time focusing on the right of boom stuff, what happens after the fact. But the overwhelming majority of our time is spent down there, left of boom, because we don't want that thing to happen. That is the worst case scenario that most people can even possibly contemplate. So we do everything that we can, and there are an awful lot of people working to make sure that it doesn't get to this, because this is a life-changing, devastating event, regardless of what our capability is to recover. You can't just sit there and go, well, we have a lot of assets, we have a lot of tools, we have a lot of trained responders, and we'll be able to get things done in a very efficient and quick manner if something like a 10 kiloton nuclear weapon goes off in the city of DC. Yeah, did you hear that last part? That meant that there was a nuclear explosion in DC. That's obviously not a good thing. There's no scenario that involves, you know what, that'll be okay, we'll be able to recover. So that mentality, that way of looking at the world, that way of looking at things is so critical and so important for real estate agents. To not focus in on, well, if it happens, if I am in a bad place, if I am downstairs in the basement, if I am locked in that bathroom, if I am face to face, nose to nose, belly to belly, mano a mano with a bad guy. I took karate last week. I'll just be able to use my pepper spray. Oh wait, I've got this Guard Llama app. Oh, all that stuff that they sold me. Yeah, that'll be great. I'll just use that. But is it with you? Do you know how to use it? Does it work? Can you fight your way clear enough to be able to get access to those things? I don't know. Therefore, I am not comfortable working on or spending a lot of time perfecting the tasks and the things on the right-hand side of the boom. I want to focus my task on the left-hand side. What can I do to keep me from getting in front of that bad guy? How can I overcome my own fears? And it's not just fear of the bad guy. That takes us into the second portion of this about it's not just the fear of the bad thing, it's fear of missing and losing stuff. Meaning, if most agents feel that if they meet at the office every time that they're going to lose business, because this client who calls up on that hot buyer lead, because let's face it, we're talking about buyers in this situation, that hot buyer lead is going to go with another agent because they don't want to meet you at the office. They're sitting out in front of the house right now and they just want to get in. So you're fearful that you're going to lose business. And then you're like, well, maybe I won't lose their business if I can think of exactly the right thing to say. So then you're fearful that you're not going to say the right thing because you haven't thought about it enough. Or you've got this script and it just doesn't sound right because scripts don't sound right because they're predictable. Think back to the Beverly Carter situation. The bad guys in that scenario had a very well-rehearsed response to questions, had a very well-rehearsed plan ahead of time, where they were going to go, what they were going to do, fake emails, fake phone calls, fake people. I mean, because they were in the initial, the male bad guy was like, yeah, my wife is going to be coming there with it. And then when Beverly Carter showed up, she wasn't there. And there was a line, an excuse, and a story that went with that from the bad guy's perspective of why she wasn't there. and then went through, and you can see some of the things that Beverly Carter was doing in her last moments were texting pictures of the home as she was walking through to the wife, who in this case was a real human being, but an accomplice in the kidnapping. And well, it was intended to be extortion for money, but ended up being a kidnapping and a murder. So it's important to understand that the bad guys already thought about some of your responses and what you're going to say and how you're going to do it. So how you deal with that, how you deal with, am I going to lose business? Am I going to not say the right thing? Am I going to lose clients because they're going to lose respect for me? They're going to get angry with me, or worse yet, what most people fear is this really awful little thing about pride. It's like, are they not going to like me? Are they going to get upset with me if I say something? Are they going to get angry? Is a nice person, a nice client, going to get angry with me if I say, look, I'm just not I'm a little bit uncomfortable right now? The answer to that is no. A normal, sane, rational human being can recognize the fact that, you know what, this might be a little intimidating to you, and I understand. We can back this up. A normal, rational human being. A non-normal, rational human being, well, maybe it'll bother them. But the question you have to ask yourself is, let's say they're not a normal, rational human being, but they're not unsafe either. They're not really a bad guy. Do you still want to work with them? If they're not rational, not normal, do you still want to work with them? So even what you're trying to do here, and the solution for those pieces, is develop your own left and right limits. How it comes down in the military world is you have firing sectors. You have sector range cars. When you go out and you put yourself out in a position and you take on your fighting position, whether you're dismounted or mounted or whatever, you're out there and you know that I'm shooting in this direction and from about there to about there. I don't shoot down here because my buddy's down there and I could shoot him in the face, and that's not going to be good. So you stay within this confine, which you can't see off camera. You stay within your confine. You have a left and a right. So you stay within that. So what is it when it comes to your business that would be outside of your sector? You don't want to do anything outside of it. You don't want to focus on things that aren't in your wheelhouse. So if someone comes to you and says, look, I want to meet at that house right now, and if you're not willing to meet with me right now, then I don't want to work with you. I got to tell you, safety or not, that sends up the biggest red flag that I don't want to work with this human being, because I don't work with mean people. I don't work with rude, belligerent, and irrational people. I just don't. I'm not going to. Life is far too short to put myself or my family through that entire ordeal. Now, everybody's situation, how they handle those things is going to be a little bit different. One thing with me is, well, quite frankly, a thing that inherent to me is I don't intimidate very easily. So it's pretty difficult for folks to kind of get that upper hand dominance. So I don't respond to it real well. It doesn't mean I always bow up and play Rambo type. I don't succumb to it. Oftentimes, one of the things that I will do is I will give people a lot of control, of perceived control, by maintaining control for myself. So one thing that if you get folks who are very wrapped up in being in charge and they must be the big superior, is I feed them. You feed them. You just keep feeding them left and right, and make sure that ego stays nice and inflated. Because once they stay with their ego nice and inflated, it's a little bit easier to convince them of the right thing to do, because, well, all you have to do is convince them it was their idea. And that's neither here nor there, but that's about the only way I'm going to work with somebody who's a little bit, who's belligerent or mean or disrespectful, is if I can still control the situation by giving up a lot of control. I know that's a little bit of an advanced tactic, but you have to determine what it is that you're not willing to do. I'm not willing to do certain things. I will not show a house at 9 o'clock at night or something ridiculous like that. I'm not going to do it. Sunday is church day. It is going to be extremely unlikely for me to meet with you on a Sunday. I know that sounds crazy, doesn't it? We work on the weekends. How do you do that? Well, that's because that's one of my rules. That's actually not my rule. It's one of God's. It's, honor the Sabbath. It's one of those, pesky 10 Commandment things. So that's one of the things that I hold to as hard as I possibly can. I will make exceptions in extreme circumstances. But most often, my favorite thing to do, my best thing to do, that everybody is happy, is that, hey, I don't do this on Sundays, but I've got an agent over here that would love to help you out. And, they're awesome. And then I'll extend out to that agent and go, look, if you write an offer or something's ready, then let's split this bad boy. I'm going to make it worth your time. I don't want to just throw a couple bones at you and go about it that way. But that's how I handle it. And I'm saying these things to kind of give you some of those examples of how I like to handle these things, because I do have limits and I won't do certain things. I have other things that come up on my schedule that just don't allow me to do everything that I want to do at the drop of a hat. I'm not a jack-in-the-box agent. I can't do certain things, and I'll say no. But most often I'll say, instead of saying no, I'll say, can you help me out? No, well, yes, and it may not be me. Is that okay with you? You see what they say. Because most of the time when it comes to, key distinction to understand the difference between buyers and sellers is that buyers are looking for a house, sellers are looking for an agent. So buyers in most cases are really just kind of looking for entrance and access to the house. And if you can help provide them with a person to do that, you're still in the mix and you're still there. If nothing happens on that particular day or that particular time because you can't make it, then you pick up the pieces later on. In some cases, I've had it happen here at Pearson Smith where some folks I had known for a long, long time were working with me, and then just scheduled, I couldn't do some certain things. So I brought in another agent to help me out. And they, you know what? They really liked working with her. And they've kind of started to feel bad. It's like, well, I feel like we should go back and work with him. And I'm going, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You work with who you feel that works best with you, and vice versa. So it turned into a referral situation, and everybody is happy. Myself, I'm ecstatic about it because my friends, my folks are getting exactly what it is that they need that fits the bill for them exactly. Because I would just never force anybody into a situation like that. So you got to develop your own little thing about how you can maintain control of your business, control of your time, and then control of the clients. Sometimes by giving up control. And I do not mean being manipulated. Nothing bugs me more personally, this is offside the safety thing, but nothing bugs me more personally than an agent who comes in from the very beginning with the idea that I'm a real estate agent, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I can do this, you can't, you're dumb, you can't do this without me. And that really bothers me down to my core of a human being, especially when you deal with folks in Loudoun County out here where we are. It is highly likely that that person that you're talking with across the table, maybe they're a retired general officer from the military, maybe they're a CEO or a CFO of a major corporation. You just don't know. And to go up and to tell somebody who's a CEO of a company with 6,000 employees and a $7 billion market cap that you can't do this on your own is ludicrous. It's not that they can't, it's that they don't want to, because they got other things that they need to do. And they're happy to pay for services for someone else who can help them get what they want. That's what they're used to getting. So the idea that idea of control is not what I'm talking about. But in order to be able to handle those clients that treat you like a jack in the box, you have to understand, you have to develop your own left and right limits. That's on you. That can't be provided for you in a safety training slide. It can't be provided for you by your broker. That's something that you as an individual have to determine. Some people work nights, some people work mornings. I get up at 5 a.m., 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Okay, 360. I do sleep in a couple times, just depends on where I am, what I'm doing. But it's rare. It's extremely rare. So if you want to talk at 5:30, I'm up. Let's roll. Let's do it. But also at midnight, probably not around. I could be. I don't sleep very much, but that's beside the point. My family time in the evening is the most important thing to me. Dinner and time with my wife and my girls. So that little block of time between like 6 and 8 o'clock is very protected and very guarded by me. The way I look at it is I'm pretty much available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's 12 hours a day, every day. That's kind of the way I look at it. That's 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Saturday, I kind of only like to do up until maybe 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. So that kind of leaves in, about 8 hours ish. So that's 8 hours on Saturday, 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then Sunday I'm off. If you can't find time in your schedule to work me in on those days, then maybe it's just best that we don't work together. And I'm going to hook you up with somebody else who can help you with those times. So that's the easiest way to overcome that fear, is to have a plan to control your time and to control your own business. The uncertainty part, That's harder to do because uncertainty is the basis for all fear. It's the basis for most fear. You don't know what exactly is going to happen. So by building in some of those things, some of those rules, some of that left and right, you can have a greater idea and a greater control over what may or may not happen. That gives you a little bit more certainty. But there's still going to be things out there that will continue to keep you uncertain. Things are going to happen you're not going to expect. Somebody's going to call you you're not going to expect. Something's going to happen that's going to be a little bit outside of these realms, and then you have to apply your own rules to it. But I don't like to try and think of it that way, as if I've got to figure out, again, going back to the big national association that gives you 56 things that you're supposed to do in order to stay safe. I don't like to try and figure out where this human being that I'm talking with fits on this list of 56. I don't like trying to do that. I like to keep very simple, basic guidelines of what is it that they're looking for? What is most valuable to them? And I will ask them, what's most valuable to me, to you? Is it time? Is it knowledge? What is it that you feel like you're most lacking? And then I can give them that in duplicate and triplicate. Or if I can't, I want to hand them to another agent that can. There are certain areas I've got no business working in Arlington. I don't know the area very well at all. So if somebody calls me up and says, hey, I want to work in Arlington, ain't going to be me. I'm referring that stuff out. So what is it that you do, and how do you take, and how do you address most folks, and how do you take them from prospect to client? What's your process? At what point? What are the things that would make you say no? What are the things that would make you say, no, I'm not working with you? Because, and you don't have to say it like that. Maybe it's just something very amicable. Maybe, again, like in my situation, somebody says, hey, I want to work in Arlington. Great. You are not going to get good service with me because I don't even know how to begin to navigate that condo world and figure out how all of those different things work, and parking. I drive a big jacked up truck. I don't even fit in the parking spaces in Arlington. I am not going to be the one that's going to help you very much. So from that standpoint, I'm not your guy. And I should, would it be okay if I refer you to someone else? I'm going to personally screen them. I'm going to personally send you somebody that I think would best match what it is that you're looking for and the personality that I think you have. But feel free to say no at any time. You can change your mind. You can, we can make other arrangements, however you see fit. But I'm not your guy in Arlington. That would be a huge disservice to you. Pretty simple, right? That's not a big script. I guess if you wrote all that down, you could say that's a script. But I just think that that's the best way to handle it from a human being standpoint. Somebody asked me, hey, can you do this in my personal life? Going, nah, not really. I'm not your guy. A great example is they asked me to do, now, you know what, I won't go into that story later on, but they asked me to do some things that I'm not very good at in my personal life, one of the associations I'm involved with. And I was like, nah, it's not my best thing. What ended up happening is we found a job that was perfect for me within that organization. And, I'm rolling from there. Everything's great. The person that we ended up getting for that position is way better at it than I would have ever been. And I think I'm pretty good at what it is that I'm doing now. So you develop those rules. You develop how you are going to approach things to help knock down some of that fear. You can't eliminate fear. You just have to be able to deal with it sometimes. You're going to still end up doing things that are going to be a little bit scary. You're going to be scared that you're going to lose the business. You're going to be scared that you're going to say something that you shouldn't have. You're going to be scared that you're not doing everything that you should, and you're probably going to be scared that you're going to forget things to do that you should have done. That's normal. It's perfectly okay. But as long as you have a system and a process, and more importantly, guidelines. What are your guidelines? What says you will? What says you won't? What makes a yes? What makes a no? And do you stick to it? Because if you don't stick to it, if you get more uncertainty from your own actions, because you can't stay consistent and you don't stay consistent with your own rules and guidelines that you set for yourself, that's not going to be a happy place for you to be in. Regardless of the safety issue, that's just in general, in life and in business. If you don't follow your own rules, that's what upsets most people the most. And on top of that, not living up to your own potential is also one of the other things. But these are important to understand. So how does that all affect and come back to the final point I wanted to talk about? And that's damn lies, and statistics. The National Association of Rabbits Remember, I can't use that word realtor because they come after me every time I say it in terms of safety. Like, we're not sponsoring your stuff. It's like, good, I don't want you to. But anyway, the National Association of Rabbits, get what I mean? They have a series, a report that they come out with every year that says these are how many attacks, these are how many things, these are how many times an agent has been, fearful of something, and they come up with all these things, and then you're supposed to be able to gather something from it. The problem is they come out with new statistics every year that essentially say the same thing as they did the previous year because they ask the same questions. They're trying to, and not wrongly so, they're trying to gauge the same environment over a period of years to see if there's a movement of more fear, less fear, however, whatever's working, whatever's not. The problem is it just doesn't seem like anything's being done once you get those statistics. So what difference does it make? As I like to say, 47.3 of all statistics are made up on the spot. They're fiction, right? So when you say that 2/3 of all agents have taken some form of a self-defense training, what's that mean? Well, I mean, so what? I mean, what does that mean? Did the association provide? No, I don't know. I don't even know what that means. So I'm not sure what that's supposed to tell anybody, if anything, because I don't think that means that a whole bunch of people out there are ready to fight and win a fight with a bad guy. I just don't see what that actually tells anybody. Then you go down to another statistic that says, well, certain number of agents have been in a fearful situation, or they have been a victim of something themselves. Again, what does that tell us? Because what should we be, the idea and the point I'm trying to get at is, what are we going to do with that knowledge? If we have 2/3, and I'm making these are not the statistics from their report. I'm just putting numbers as examples of what you could be doing and what we will be doing going forward here on this channel and through my YouTube channel, is we will be taking and looking at actions that we can take to either promote or correct, promote those things that are working and correct those things that are not. Because that's the most important thing that you can get out of a statistic, right? 2/3 of the agents are taking self-defense classes. Okay, are they working? I don't know. And all things get messed up. Sorry about that. But that doesn't tell me anything about the state of affairs, of the state of agents. If it was to tell me anything, and this is what I suspect, that there are a lot of agents out there who feel like they want to do something. They want to do something. They want to take control. The opposite of what we've been talking about. But there are a lot of you out there that want to take control of your own situation, whether it's your business, your safety, whatever. You want to take that control. You're just not quite sure how. Or if you know how, you're not sure that you can pull it off, or it's too complex because it's 56 things you got to do instead of 2 or 3 different principles that you can follow. We'll get to there. We'll get there. We got more stuff coming up the rest of this month that'll help build on all of those things about what you can do when it comes to safety and your own business processes. But what I'm trying to get at is the statistics that you see are put together always, every statistic out there, every single one, the one that you put in your marketing reports, and every single statistic that you see, read, or is created is designed to get you to think or do a certain thing. Or it's meaningless. If it's not, if they're just throwing statistics out there, which quite frankly seems to be the case sometimes, it's completely meaningless. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It doesn't answer anybody's questions. It doesn't do anything. Maybe it confirms an idea or a fear that you already had, maybe falsely. Maybe it's the wrong thing. Maybe you're doubling down on the wrong thing. So I like to look at statistics and be like, what does that tell me? What's lacking? What's the problem? And is there a solution? So that's the way I like to look at statistics. So if 2/3 of the agents out there are taking self-defense training, I think that tells me that there are agents that are uncomfortable with their current safety training and with their current level of safety on the job, so that they are going to another level to help learn self-defense skills, but they just don't know what they don't know yet because, they're, again, this is the right of the boom stuff and we want to focus on left of boom. But they're doing something, and that's a correct action, because action is better than no action. Just misdirected. So how can we capitalize on that? And I don't mean capitalize on that as to put money in anybody's pocket. I mean, how can we take advantage of that feeling and that sentiment and help do things and institute a change that can actually work, that can actually do something, actually make improvements across the board? Because what are we after here? What am I after? I'm after making real estate agents not only a trusted member of your core advisory team. We always hear about accountants and lawyers and all this type of stuff, but we never hear a real estate agent involved in that discussion of professionals that help guide your personal and financial career along. We don't hear it. I'm here to change that. I want to change that aspect because I think that we as agents can actually provide a tremendous amount of value, but not the traditional stuff that we've been taught for decades. There's more to it. There's more to the story. And from the safety standpoint, I'm here to change the way we think about things so that no agent is a victim. Because right now, the whole entire industry and what we do and how we do it is a real big, fat, juicy target because we're predictable. Because we do things a certain way. How many bedrooms do you want? What do you want? And then the bad guys can come up with these scripts very easily, a la the Beverly Carter story, in which to get us off of our guard, to get us to feel confident and lower our guard and do things a certain way. Well, maybe, I don't normally do that, but just for you, I'm going to do that. And that's when bad things happen. So if I can shift off of those things and actually have us do some things that make us better and keep us safer, then that's what I want to try and do. And I have a background in being able to do that. I've done it over and over and over and over again throughout what's almost 16 years now of experience throughout the world, helping to either do it myself, as in plan, lead, and conduct military operations, providing personal security for folks, running an installation-wide protection program, trying to keep people safe from chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear incidents, I should say. I've got that experience, and to not bring that to the real estate world would be a huge disservice. The National Association, and to a lesser degree, the local associations of Rabbits, they have a program. They have a safety program, and they're typically not, at least has been my experience so far, that they are very reluctant, very resistant to incorporate any level of change into that because their narrative is what they want to stick with. Because if they change their narrative, it means an admission of, well, we didn't do things so well. And most folks, particularly in large bureaucratic organizations, don't like to admit guilt or admit fault. So they're just going to keep going down the path that they're going. Maybe at some point you'll be able to crack that nut and get inside of there and do something a little bit differently. But right now that's a bit of an uphill battle. And rather than fight the association, which has its own job, and I just don't care to fight them, I don't want to, let them go. We can do our own thing, grassroots style. We can do it by changing the way an agent thinks, and then having that agent talk to another agent and share it with another agent, and then go on and so forth. So that's what I'm hoping to get. That's what I'm hoping to do with this entire safety series, with this entire workshop sessions, is to change the way that you think and change the way that you act. It's not about fighting in the moment. It's not about self-defense. It's not about pepper spray. It's not about meeting at the office. It's not about any of those things. It's about developing a firm set of rules about what is acceptable and what is not, and staying within those confines. And if you do break your own confines, why? And should you do it again, does that mean that your confines are wrong, or does that mean that you acted incorrectly according to your own rules that you established? I don't know. I can't help you with those individual things. But as we go forth through these sessions, as I'm breaking down each of these little components that we face when it comes to real estate safety, I'm going to be bringing those things to you as we close out the month. And after this whole thing is done, after this entire month is done, we're going to go out and we're going to put all this stuff together into a regular, I'm not sure about the frequency yet. I'd like to do it every week, but we'll kind of have to see how demand works with that, if people are even interested. But we're at least going to do it once a month. We're going to have a safety seminar once a month, and I want to be able to push that stuff out to agents across the country and the world, because thanks to YouTube and some other things, I have a lot of agents that watch in Australia, Canada, and the UK, and I'm thankful for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are awesome. But that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to do, because what we have out there, and I'll wrap up with this for if you got Q&A questions out there. There's a flood of information out there, and this isn't just exclusive to real estate and real estate safety, but it's everything. You've heard that we are in the information age. That's true to an extent, but I think we're coming down out of the information age because there's a flood of information out there. You Google a topic, and then you get 1.2 billion results in a millisecond. And then you got to sift through those. And that's why we like Google, because Google helps us sift through those things by you add more keywords. But the information is not lacking. There's tons of it. There's tons of it out there. The question you have to ask yourself when it relates to safety is, does it work? Does any of this stuff work? And if not, what do I need to change? How do I need to change my approach in how I approach safety? What do I need to do? What do I need to do for my own personal security? And who should I listen to and who should I follow when it comes to that? And I hope that we provide some of the answer to that. But it's not just about the information. And these days, it's not just about the knowledge. Because once you have the information, this is how a lot of people go through something. They have a question, they have a problem, they do the Google search, they come up with a couple results, and then they kind of figure out some of the way that they can handle that, some of the way that they can recover from that, or recover from their problem or help fix their problem. And then you go to a place like YouTube or you go to something else, and then you watch somebody go through that step by step. It's like, gosh, I want to learn how to work this. I need to get better at Excel. In Excel, and that's what you type into Google, and you come up with an answer and go, I don't even understand what that means. Here's a checklist and a set of instructions, but I don't understand it. So you go over to YouTube and you watch some guy go point by point by point by point right through it, and you solve your problem. Within a few minutes, you've gone from, I had a problem, a very specific problem, to I don't have a problem anymore because now I know how to fix it. So the information and the knowledge is out there. But what the melding together of that information and that knowledge is the wisdom that you gain. So that's the most important piece, is the wisdom. The wisdom is what you need, especially when it comes to safety. You need to have the wisdom to understand what's good information, what's bad information. What are you trying to teach yourself, and what should you avoid teaching yourself? What's good knowledge, what's bad knowledge, what's good info, bad info. And taking that and coming up with a core that makes you. It's your plan. It's your own way of doing things that makes you different than everybody else. Because how I approach safety and personal security should be different from how you approach it, because we're different people. Turtles approach personal safety in a very different manner than do skunks and porcupines. They have a different defense mechanism that's inherent to themselves. Birds, a different way. Look across the animal kingdom. It doesn't mean one set of rules is right. You've heard fight or flight. Most animals, most people, most everything should choose flight first. It's almost always safer. And once you commit to fight, your options get less and less over time. And that's really very oversimplified. And we're gonna touch on that a little bit later, that fight or flight syndrome, in future sessions about what that really means once you get down to that fight. But so the information is out there, the knowledge is in often cases out there, but the wisdom of whether or not that makes sense for you, whether or not that works for you, whether or not it works at all, is what we're trying to get here. Then you take that wisdom and then you apply it. You do actual things. You take actual action to make yourself a better, stronger, faster, harder, tougher, whatever acronyms, whatever adjectives you want to use for yourself. However you want to do that. You want to be more agile, more responsive, more in control. Or what? How do you want to do that? So you take that wisdom, you apply it to specific actions. So that's what we're trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to do with this entire session. And all of the sessions prior to this. Each one is going to build on the other as we go through. And I apologize. I don't. The topic of the next session just completely escaped my brain. As you'll see, I'm not doing no note cards. There's no teleprompter behind me or anything like that. This is mostly off the cuff. I prepare a great deal for these things, but the presentation itself is very much off the cuff because I'm trying to build into a scenario that can help you out and work with all of the things that are going on in the background. So please stay tuned to my Facebook channel for this coming Thursday. Thursday again will be our next session on Facebook at 2 p.m. But tomorrow, we're back over onto YouTube, onto my YouTube channel. I'll put links to all of these things down below. But tomorrow is noon at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on YouTube Live. Keeping all these things live because I want to create that opportunity for you to ask questions and for us to have a little bit of a feedback session as we go through this. So I've got a couple links also. If you missed this, if you didn't catch this live, you can ask a question, you can leave feedback, leave comments. But if you're watching this right now or you're watching this later on, you can leave those right into Facebook. But if you want to leave a question for a future episode, any of that, there's a little Google survey and I'll post the link down to there. You don't have to sign in or do anything like that. It's completely anonymous. You just put your information in there, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to share a tip with somebody. It's all built into that form But if you got something to say, I would love to hear your responses to this, whether or not this is even making sense, whether or not this is something that you want to, that you're interested in pursuing further. Whether you want a little bit more of a Reader's Digest version, I get that. Whether you want a little bit more of an in-depth process, I can do that too. So my point is to help you guys, and because I have the knowledge, skills, and the training to do this type of thing, and I want to share it back with the real estate community, so that the entire industry comes out, or entire industry moves in a different direction that is just better than where it has been moving lately. And that is my entire point with pretty much everything I do. So thank you again for watching. And if you got any questions, comments, please fire them up. I'm looking through the thing now. I gotta swipe over to the left. Okay, don't see anything sitting out there right now. But thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow on YouTube Live, and then back here on Thursday for Facebook Live. And pay attention to my feed and get onto all that stuff. If you'd like to get reminders and built-in stuff into your inbox, you can do that too. That link is going to be below, so we'll be able to get you get the course outline, you get some of the things that we talked about today in a little bit more of a concise format. Maybe you want to take notes from it, however you want to go about that. But if there's something that you feel is lacking, let us know. And thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time.